Okay folks, now that your bike's tire is off your bike, you got the chain side and the brake side. Now the brakes, you may have already noticed when it came off the bike, is able to come off. You got your hardware here, and then this whole piece will slide out. Now if it does slide out, you got to be really certain that this spacer doesn't get lost. That goes in first, then the brakes, then you've got your washers. Put them on the same order that they came off. Okay, now if your chain tensioner falls off, obviously there's two ways that it goes on. It can go on like that, or it can go on like this. You want the bolt to be as far away from the center of the wheel as possible. So you would put it like that. Okay. Now, let's see. If you've got it on there, an easy way to keep it from falling off is just thread a nut on the end here. That way the brake can't come off all the way. The first step, when you're actually changing the inner tube, start at the valve stem. You got your valve stem right here. Now look at the tread. This is a very slow and daunting task. You're going to look in the tread and you're going to find whatever made the tire go flat. Okay, now once you find one thorn, don't stop. Keep looking and find whatever it is. There can be 3, 4, 5 different thorns or nails or staples or whatever the heck it was that made your tire go flat. Go all the way around until you're back at the valve stem again, and then do it again just to be sure. Now to get your tire actually off the rim, you know, with no air in it obviously, you're going to take your tire lever and lay this down. Take your tire levers, mine click together, the same kind we sell at the shop. You can order them on the website if you don't have any. But these come apart and they're separate levers. You're going to take the spoon end and put it in the bead of the tire. And lift the tire up, and this end clicks onto a spoke. And you've got another one here. Put it on like that. Then you can just kind of work your way around getting the tire off the wheel. Yes, hard to see with the camera, but just work your way all the way around the tire until it's all the way off. Once your tire is off the rim, it's separate from the rim now, you're going to take your tube out. You push the valve stem up into the tire. You can just kind of reach in and pull it out with your fingers. You see this? Just kind of pull it out. And you're going to put it in the exact opposite way. Now the hard part, the reason I'm actually showing you this, how to put the tube on, is because your valve stem, with these big heavy duty tires, can be a pain in the butt to get into the valve stem hole. And when you put the new tube in your tire, after making sure there's all the thorns and you felt inside, make sure there's no thorns or nails sticking out, you're going to put your new tube in the tire. I'm just going to show you with this one. You feed it all the way around. You know, this is obviously still the old tube, this one's still good. But you want to feed it up with your fingers in the tire, and you can kind of see just the edge of that hole. You're going to line the valve stem up with the hole, and you can just kind of push on the back of the tire and get it through the hole. That way you'll be able to put the cap on and fill it with air, and it'll be easy. Now, before we put the tire back on the bike, now that we got the new inner tube in and all the thorns are out, don't bother filling it with air yet. You'll fill it with air once it's all together. It's a lot easier. There's a couple things you want to be sure of. You want to be sure this wire, the relief cut that I showed you earlier in the axle, has to be facing forward. So if you're sitting behind the bike, you want that to be going forward. If it is turned the other way, you want to just roll the wheel around until it's forward. And you want to make sure you got your chain tensioners and the brakes all on. You go ahead and take off the nut that was keeping the brake from falling off. You're just going to lift it up, slide it into the frame, and we'll go. Now once you get the back wheel back onto the bike, you're just going to go in the opposite steps. We're going to put the fender on, we're going to put the chain on, we'll put the brakes on here on this side, and then I'm going to show you how to adjust the tension on your chain. Now when you put the brakes on, don't tighten them up until you get the chain tension adjusted. We're going to get the bolt for the brake, put it back on. We just got that in there. Now, the trick with not ever having adjusted this chain tensioner is you're going to pull the whole wheel forward until that chain tensioner is not loose. You're going to make it so the axle's forward in the bike this way. And see if it's too far back, chain tensioner is going to be all loose and go anywhere. But you put it on the frame, push the axle forward, and it's going to get there, make it tight. Then you can tighten this bolt, because with the chain tensioner tight, we know it's in the right spot. It was in the same spot that when you took it apart. And you're going to get your screwdriver and you're going to tighten up that bolt. Now you want to make sure it stays in place when you tighten it. So you can kind of hold it with one hand while you tighten with the other. Now that we got the chain tensioner tightened, in the correct spot, and the brakes are tightened on the other side, we're going to put the chain on. You're going to get your chain. Now again, you don't want it to fall off the front, so we're going to have it just feed on the rear, kind of feed it up and over the gear on the rear. You're going to be able to pull it down. That's going to give you enough space to just make the connection on the chain. So you got your chain link, your master link, and you just connect it through the link like that. And then it's together. You're going to take the plate you took off earlier, put it on the master link, make sure it gets on there all the way. You're going to take the little C link that you took off earlier and just put it on like it was. Now when you get it on there, if you can't do it with your hand, you'll use a pair of pliers. There you go, that's all it takes. So that's on. Now you see the chain's real loose because we loosened the chain tensioner earlier when we took it apart. So I'm gonna use my ratchet again. You can use an adjustable wrench. We're gonna tighten this up. And you can see the chain getting tighter and tighter. Now you want to double check that it's on the front. There we go. See, when you pedal, it's still good. You want to double check that tension. It's the same as a regular bike. You don't want it too tight, but you don't want it so loose it's going to flop around. You want it to have movement in it. You want to be able to move it up and down 1.5 inches or 2 inches, like that. That's a great tension to have. Now we're back here. We've got everything buttoned up except for the back rack. We're going to take the axle wire is what we're going to be careful with. We're going to take the rack, pull it back out. It'll kind of rest on the axle here. Now when you flex it out and over, you want to make sure that you're not pinching the cable. So you want to get the one side over and then come back over here with both hands. Just go straight over the axle. That way you're not going to hit the cable and everything's going to work just fine. From here you can get the washer and the nut and put it on just like it was. We've already got the chain tensioners adjusted and all that, so we just tighten these down. Okay, the last thing I'm going to show you is the wire for your motor. You got everything else put together. You got the axle nuts tightened, the brakes, the fender, everything's done except this. There's obviously a hodgepodge of plugs here. You have to line it up just right to get it to go in. Now there's an arrow on one side, if I can get it to focus on it. There you go. The arrow that's kind of engraved on the side of the cable. There's also an arrow on the receiving side. Those arrows point to each other and sort of bottom out once they get plugged in all the way. So you're going to line it all up. You're going to line up your arrows. I also use the seam down the side as another point of reference. Once it's lined up right, it's going to plug in just snugly. It's not going to be hard to plug it in. While I do it, it's just going to plug in all the way, and it's going to go. The way you know it's plugged in all the way is the arrow on the male side, the side from your motor, bottoms out against the sheath of the other wire. Then you can just kind of tuck it up against the frame, throw a zip tie on it, put a zip ties the same places you took them off for your cable for your taillight house wiring, and then you just air up your tire and you're ready to go.